I'm Erin Peterson, and for those of you who don't know me, I think I recognize a good 10% of the crowd, even with the glare in my eyes. I run our ad platform evangelism program. And when I first started this program, about a year and a half ago, it was sort of a standard standing joke around the hallways. What ad platform? Because we didn't have one yet. For those of you who have seen me now present for a year, year and a half, 2 years, I've seen a couple of cases, you'll see that we've come a long way from our initial conceptualization of what this ad platform would look like, what this ad platform should be. It's still very much, however, in an embryonic state. And one of the things that I do want to acknowledge up front, for those of you joining in, is that because it is still so new, I find when I talk to people, even when I spoke at the Quest Summit last week, which is a gathering of our technical fellows and technical VPs, that there was still a lot of questions around the basics, the very basics about the ecosystem of advertising. And I was finding that people were coming to me and saying that they couldn't understand the technology without understanding the basic infrastructure of the marketplace. So we have 2 sessions. This session is the intro session. It's the lap around the Microsoft ad platform. There's a second session following this given by Rob Devine back there in the corner. And he'll be doing a deep dive into the core aspects of the platform. So for those of you who are looking for a very technical session, Rob's is the one. So if anybody wants to bail out now and go to any of the other Azure sessions, feel free, and I am not offended. For those of you who do want to stay, I hope you understand that this is going to be our intro session. So what I'm going to go through today is the overview of the ecosystem, go over the basic components of an ad platform, talk to you a bit about how our ad platform is developing, and then talk to you a bit about what you can do today using our ad platform as it sits. I'll also give you a sneak preview into what I expect you'll be able to do in the next 6 to 12 months. I'm very pleased to say that we've hit all of the roadmaps we've put forth publicly. We've hit our delivery dates. So you can pretty much rest assured that if we say, hey, you can go ahead and pilot this, let us know. We can get you into that pilot. And we can get moving on this relatively quickly. What I want all of you to walk away with, the very first thing, and I say this quite often, is that advertising does not equal monetization. There's still a base level assumption, particularly in the web services community, that when one talks about advertising, what one is talking about is how do I monetize FOO with ads? And that's not necessarily what this is about. And certainly advertising does not equal search monetization. More times than I like to consider, people say, yeah, but where's Microsoft in advertising? You guys are getting killed in search. And we have an amazing search product, by the way, for those of you who think we are getting killed in search. More importantly, we have a great footprint across the advertising industry. And from that perspective, we're doing very, very well. And the platform that we're building out supports that and gives everybody else an opportunity to take advantage of that. The other thing I want you all to walk away with is an understanding that we're building an open ad platform. For those of you with experience in the advertising industry, you understand why this is important. A couple of hallmark decisions that we made about a year ago that we've continued to stick to have worked out very, very well for us and our customers, is that when we open up the components of our platform and we make them available to the public, we do a couple of things. They are right now, certainly through the APIs, free to use. They are transparent. We give you all the information you're looking for about the platform. Most importantly, they are what we refer to in the advertising industry as platform agnostic, which is a shorthand way of saying any data that you develop as a result of using our Microsoft ad platform, you own. This stands in stark contrast to the experience you might have in some other places where once you built data or developed data through an experience with some ad platforms, you're not allowed to take that data if you leave. You're not allowed to commingle it with other forms of data. And this really restricts the ability to make smart ad decisions. It restricts the ability to build tools that help move the ad industry forward. And this is something that we hew to as essential to what we're building in our ad platform. The last thing I'd like you to walk away with is a keen desire to commit resources toward building tools and services and contributing services to our platform as it's growing and taking off. 9 times out of 10, when I tell somebody I'm an ad platform evangelist, they say to me, I've got this great idea to monetize whatever. And And probably 7 times out of 10, I say, that's great. You're really not going to get very far with it. And this crushes sometimes startups, it crushes various people throughout the internal community who are convinced that right now, being able to slap an ad on any piece of inventory they create is the holy grail to revenues. And the industry is just not there yet. And if anybody wants data on that, go ahead and grab me afterward. I'm more than happy to point you toward a couple of really detailed analyst reports that I keep at my fingertips that show that there's still a bit of a lag behind the perception that you can slap ads easily into anything, particularly digital properties, and monetize them. And I'll go ahead and explain a little bit about why. Core to understanding why this cannot yet be done easily, and I'm not saying it can't be done at all, just saying it can't be done easily, is understanding that in its current state, digital advertising breaks into 2 forms of, you can think of it as 2 forms of advertising. If you look at, for example, the homepage on MSN or MSNBC, you'll see some ads on the right-hand side. You'll see some ads up at the top of the page. They're generally pictures. They're generally images. And it's referred to as display advertising. If you look, for example, at search results, you'll see text boxes on the side. And what most people assume is the primary difference is that display advertising, you can run images and you can run rich media ads in them. But the real difference is underneath. Those image ads, those display ads, are sold in a negotiated manner. What that means is whenever you want to have an ad show up on your inventory, you call a salesperson, or the advertiser has called a salesperson looking for inventory. That salesperson looks around, they find the right inventory, they negotiate back and forth, generally over the phone, sometimes over email, and they decide where they're going to place the ad. Anybody in technology would understand this is not scalable. You just cannot scale out that sort of negotiation. Contextual advertising, on the other hand, is sold primarily through an auction-based mechanism. Anybody familiar with the rise of eBay and how eBay has taken market share away from traditional auctioneers understands that through the application of a programmatically accessible auction-based engine, you can reach tremendous scale in a marketplace. You can also, by the way, reach tremendous liquidity in the marketplace, but right now we'll concentrate on the scale aspect. So in order to make it really easy in a programmatic way to take any inventory you give us and help put an ad on it, that part of the marketplace has to be developed. And that is where there's a lack of maturity. And that is where our ad platform is really gaining ground. To understand why it's taken a little bit to get here, it helps to understand the major participants in the ecosystem. You've got agencies, advertisers, publishers, and in the middle, I always put tool providers. Advertisers are the people who control those dollars that are spent. As I tell startups come to see me all the time, unless you can get the eye of an advertiser, unless you can get them excited about buying inventory on your product, it's almost meaningless how cool the inventory is you create. I see some really cool inventory. It's just very, very hard to monetize. Advertisers drive the engine that spends all the money and spins all the money through the entire advertising ecosystem. It's about 200 some odd billion a year, about 10% of that going into digital. And it helps understand why only 10% of that goes into digital. It's not because advertisers lack sophistication. It's not because they lack the desire. It's because they completely lack the ability to shift their ad dollars from their current mechanism of buying through agencies and of calling up salespeople and buying local TV spots, because it's not programmatically accessible. I'll go into a little more detail on why. Publishers are the recipients of that $220 some odd billion. And publishers are very, very loosely defined in the digital ad space as anybody who creates inventory that can then be monetized. Whether this is a blimp, whether this is a blog, whether this is a widget, whether this is a piece of ad-funded software, whether it's a magazine that's transitioned to being online. Publisher is loosely used in this context to mean anybody who's created monetizable inventory. And agencies are key to understanding how ad dollars flow through the ecosystem. Within the agency world, there's hundreds of agencies, and there are about 5 major agency holding companies, 6 if you count Dentsu out of Japan. And those 5 major agency holding companies see about 65, 75%, depending on who's counting, of all the raw ad dollars flowing through them. So if you can make it easier for these agencies to do business with their participants, you can drive tremendous value in the tools that you put into the marketplace. As an example of how large the industry opportunity is here, each of these agencies has literally hundreds of agencies rolling up into that massive agency holding company. And of those top 5, 4 of them believe that they have a significant opportunity for competitive differentiation by having different tools in each of their local offices. In other words, San Francisco doesn't use the same tools as Chicago, and they don't use the same tools as New York. For those of you who build tools, this represents a huge opportunity because the agencies right now just are going around having these one-off tools built. It's very, very hard for them to speak to each other. It's very hard to exchange data. There's no standard taxonomy. There's no standard mechanism for data exchange. And as we build out the fundamental core aspects of our ad platform, that's one of the first problems we're tackling. It's how do we make it easy to share data back and forth? How do we deliver a common development framework? How do we deliver a common taxonomy? How do we make it easier for these agencies to go ahead and have all these tools built at the local level and still have them correspond across each other at the holding company level? That's where these tool providers fit in. The significant opportunity that sits in front of, I think, many people in this room over the next couple of years is how you build tools. How do you build tools for these agencies? How do you build tools for the advertisers? I'll give you a great example that within the last couple of weeks, one of the top 10 advertisers in the world came to us with a problem that they're trying to solve because they've made a significant investment in their overall Microsoft IT stack, and they've got all these product managers running around, and they're all building websites, and they don't have a tool. There's no tool in the marketplace that makes it really easy for these product managers to take the data they have on their website, develop search advertising on top of it, use the keywords as a basis for driving additional traffic to the site, and figure out a way to drive a significant amount of increased value to that site that they've already put in place. They don't even have a way really to track them across all the various product managers. And the agencies, I've already mentioned that there's the opportunity to build the tools for the agencies themselves, everything from workflow tools, moving pieces of paper back and forth. You'll see in a minute how important that is. With the publishers, there's a burgeoning opportunity to develop tools that showcase how a publisher can take the inventory they have in hand available to them. If you're interested in solving the absolute hardest problem in advertising technologies right now, it's doing inventory prediction. Doing great inventory prediction for publishers is just about impossible today. And what inventory prediction means is being able to predict exactly what kind of inventory you're going to have available, exactly the kind of audience, and roughly how much that's going to go for. So if anybody in here wants to tackle a particularly difficult problem, that's the one to grab. So these opportunities for tool providers are across the board, with very simple workplace tools built on top of our cloud services layer to very complex algorithmic-driven decision-making tools. It helps to understand how we've reached this point where the industry is in such need for tools to help advertising get done. When advertising first really took off as an industry, it was the 1950s. And there were basically 4 channels available to you for advertising: CBS, NBC, ABC, and whatever your local PBS affiliate was. Today, there are literally thousands of channels available to every advertiser. When this advertising industry first took off in the 50s, it was really easy to develop one piece of creative. You knew that that one piece of creative was going to be designed to be put in front of your entire audience end to end. There was no need to develop multiple forms of creative, no need to track those multiple forms of creative. More than that, you knew that if you made that one ad buy and you just put it in front of enough people, you could launch a product from scratch and completely change the marketplace. One example that I go to very often is the launch of Scope. When Scope mouthwash was launched this way, I believe 1956, they were able to reach 9 out of 10 households, 10 times each, in 4 weeks, all across the US. And after they ran this campaign, in those 4 weeks, Scope dislodged Listerine as the #1 mouthwash, and Listerine still hasn't regained that position. And it's been, 50 years at this point. This absolutely could not be done today. You cannot buy this sort of audience reach today. It is impossible to do this today. And so advertisers are faced with a problem. They have all this money. They know that they're going to spend this money, and that money is going to turn sales. And they're trying desperately to figure out how to put it in front of people who are now engaged with digital forms of content, digital mediums. A lot of times I hear people throw around the John Wanamaker phrase, I know 50% of my advertising dollar is wasted, I just don't know which half. And this is frequently used to justify a transition to CPA-based advertising. Now, this is something I argue about internally all the time. By the way, raise your hand if you know what CPA-based advertising means. Great, I'll go through and explain it. CPA-based advertising means pay per X, so pay per click, pay per conversion. It's how search advertising works, for example. You make a bid and you say, I'm willing to pay X for every click that comes through. Brand advertising, on the other hand, you just buy audience, you buy reach, and you're going to put your message in front of as many people as you can understand. So there's a tendency among people in technology to believe that unless something can be sold on a CPA basis, unless you can measure precisely the outcome of having purchased and placed that ad space is useless. And the example that I often give people right now, I used this 2 weeks ago in a large lecture hall. I called somebody out and I asked them how to spell baloney. And they got to B-O before they got to B-O-L-O-G-N-A. And there's not a person in here, I bet, who doesn't know exactly what the commercial is. I see 4 people laughing right here. You could not get that kind of mind share with CPA-based advertising today. I haven't seen that commercial in probably 30, 20, 25 years, but if I walk into a grocery store and, God forbid, buy my children bologna, I'm going to buy them Oscar Mayer. And so when we think about how to help advertisers shift their ad budget from this traditional TV-based mechanism to shifting it online, we have to bear in mind that over the years, they're not just spending their dollars willy-nilly. They have figured out ways to spend those dollars very effectively. And part of the path we have from our ad platform is to help them continue to do so. So to open up all sorts of new opportunities for them to spend their money with us, spend it wisely, and be able to find new sorts of ways to track the efficacy of the spending of those ad dollars. The big change that's occurring right now in advertising is not the shift to a digital medium. A lot of people assume that the big change that's happening right now is that you can slap an ad on a website. The big change that's really happening is as a result of the explosion of opportunities for advertisers to reach publishers, as a result of the explosion of devices against which we view and read and engage with content, that there's a significant opportunity for advertisers no longer to craft one message and put it in front of as many people as possible and then measure how it performed. The opportunity is there for advertisers to craft a unique message for every single person that they have to reach, and then reach that person at the appropriate point in the day, on the appropriate form of content, on the appropriate digital device. And that is the real shift that's happening in advertising. That's one of the reasons that we believe so strongly that what we have to create and bring into the marketplace is a true ad platform. People ask me very frequently, why do we have to have an ad platform? Why can't we just make it easy to buy dollars and spend them on whatever content comes across the transom? But this ecosystem requires a platform that can allow the advertisers to interact with the publishers, to interact with the agencies across such a variety of devices and across such a variety of people, that these decisions and these responses can only be tracked in an automated, algorithmically driven fashion. And the tools required to support that experience can only be delivered on top of a platform. They can't be delivered one-off, estranged from one another. This is a quick chart that I've been using lately that captures the explosion of data that people are now expected to track and manage and make decisions from as we shift to this digital medium. So if you look on the far right, you'll see that we start out with an advertiser creating an RFP. And by the way, this is a highly manual process. One of the things that continually surprises me when I talk to people in the advertising agency is how manual these processes still are. So the advertiser will create an RFP, and an ad ID of some sort is created. The advertiser then goes to the agency decides, and this is grossly oversimplified, by the way. This is for display purposes only. And the advertiser decides to partner with the agency, and the agency will split the ad dollar spent into, say, display advertising, online advertising, and traditional advertising. And from there, it further splits into many channels. You'll probably take your display dollars and you'll spend them on Microsoft, you'll spend some on Google, you'll spend some through Yahoo. They'll take the traditional dollars, they're spending them on TV, they're spending them on radio. And bear in mind that when I say TV, it's not simply tracking one box called television. If you're running a multinational campaign, even if you're running a national campaign, you're tracking across a wide variety of local TV stations, and you have to track how this ad performed on every one of those TV stations. So think of these as being multiplied by literally the hundreds. And this is before target data is added. This is one of the other really big shifts that's happening in the digital industry as advertising moves into the digital space from the analog space. It used to be that you would get some sort of target data. You'd probably get it from Experian. Maybe you'd get it from Dun & Bradstreet. But you now have the opportunity to get incredibly granular data on every single person who engages with your ad, on every single person who engages with your piece of content. And so you're then tracking not only every single ad purchase you made, but you're also tracking the targeting data across your entire audience on a per individual basis. This is not something that can be done by some 23-year-old kid fresh out of a liberal arts major who sits there, they're almost always English majors, and they're hand reconciling invoices against each other today. They'll get tear sheets from magazines, they'll get a snapshot that the ad ran on TV. You cannot take that process and apply it to the digital space. It just doesn't scale. So the agencies need tools to be able to help them do this. The advertisers need tools to be able to take this data in and make sense of it, and then apply it against the existing customer data they have internally. And the first place at which this system starts to break down in the transition from the traditional world, the analog world, to the digital world is on the putting together the invoice. So today, literally that 22-year-old English major that I was talking about has to go around and pull all these different pieces, make sure they perform, create an invoice, they're tracking it in Excel. The invoice is produced, and then they have to check and see if it's correct. And the rate of error is huge, something like 70 to 80%. So they have to go back through, and they have to reconcile it again for, I'm sorry, the rate of error is high for the digital space. It's not as high for the traditional space. So they have to go back through, and they have to check it, and this takes hours and hours and hours. This means that as you shift from managing a traditional campaign to managing a digital campaign, your workload increases by about 9 to 11 times, depending on the agency handling it, depending on who's sharing the information. So setting aside the issue of labor involved here and the opportunities for putting tools into the marketplace that solves this labor problem, the holy grail for advertisers, and there are a couple of advertisers who are able to do this right now, is to check the lifetime value of a customer. So it used to be just that what you would want to do is check to see if somebody saw your ad, or you would want to check to see if somebody responded to your ad. And what was key to judging whether or not your campaign had been successful was simply your conversion rate. Did people see my ad? Did they respond the way that I wanted them to? But what advertisers really want to be able to do is not advertise in front of people who converted easily, but people who converted profitably. And the example that I give here is around cell phone companies. If you're a cell phone company and you've decided at the outset of this funnel that you're going to run an ad, maybe you get all the way through to the invoice and you get that initial report of how your ad performed, and you find that one channel converted at 3 times the rate of any other channel. And initially, that might look really great. But you go back 6 months later, if you're the advertiser and you have access to this data, and you realize that that cell phone ad converted really well among males 19 to 27 years old. And they reneged on their cell phone bills left and right. You had to chase half of them into collections. They turned out to be a wildly unprofitable audience for you to have attracted. It cost you more to bring those customers in the door than it was worth to in the end. And when you reevaluate the data, you realize that there was also a subset of people, say soccer moms, age 35 to 42, who also converted very well on a couple of channels, but they converted incredibly profitably. They pay their bills on time, they bought family plans, and you decide that in the future, while the initial ROI on that first ad campaign looked favorable, you're going to go ahead and you're going to target that second group. Again, this can only take place if the tools and data in the marketplaces support this. And here's another really important distinction, and I'll talk a little bit about this later, as to why Microsoft is a very favorable partner for building on top of our ad platform. Because in order for this to take place, you're sharing data from 3 different partners. You're sharing data from the publisher, you're sharing data from the agency, and you're sharing data from the advertiser. There has to be a huge level of trust among these participants in sharing this data, which is highly valuable and is very highly regulated worldwide. One of the advantages that we have found in working with these partners is that across the board, we already have relationships with these partners. And we're finding that as these partners look to move the storage of their data into cloud services, they look to Microsoft as a trusted partner in each vertical, and they look to Microsoft as a trusted partner across a whole. So as you're making a decision over the long term on where to partner, one of the things that is very attractive about partnering with us is this long-term opportunity to be able to partner seamlessly in the cloud against a variety of these customer verticals. This is a quick overview. It's actually not so quick, but I'll try and make it quick and relatively painless. This is a quick overview of how the advertising ecosystem looks today and how it's transitioning to a platform-based system. And I'm going to start on the far right-hand side in the middle with the agencies. So the agency gets this RFP, and then a team of people in the agency decides, hey, we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn this into a campaign. And they make some really cool-looking ads. They make some cool-looking pieces of creative. They negotiate with their media people to start figuring out where these ads can run. The media people start negotiating on behalf of the agency to find placements for this ads to run. And then the creative agency starts working on appropriate creative. Even just examining this very small band of the process gives a quick insight on how much opportunity there is here to transition to a digital-based system. When I was doing an architecture review with one of the major agencies a few weeks ago, and one of the things that was really striking to me, and this was new for me even, and I've been dealing with this for a while, is the process is still so manual that we reached one point in the creative process from the creative to the media agency team, and I asked, okay, how does this piece of creative transition over from the media team to the creative team, or from the creative team to the media team? And they said, Messenger. I was like, Messenger, like Messenger. And so we're talking about a world where things are still transitioning back and forth via somebody picking it up, putting it in a satchel, riding uphill through the rain, dropping it off, getting a signature, and bringing it back. There are so many opportunities in this ecosystem to develop tools and then to sell them into agencies that is really quite striking and incredibly helpful for them. After the agency decides they're going to go ahead and run this campaign, they can then partner with the third-party data providers. Again, today, as I've mentioned, it's a highly manual process. They'll pull a report from Experian. They'll pull a report from Dun & Bradstreet. They then figure out, hey, this is where we're going to place the ad. They'll negotiate with all the publishers. They'll negotiate it. Potentially, there's a third-party application provider who's helping to facilitate some aspect of the sale. Maybe it's transitioning the reporting from one aspect of the agency to another. Maybe it's taking care of the billing. Oftentimes, this is done in an Excel macro. And it's transitioned back to the publisher. In the digital space, the publisher will track that ad with an ad tagging mechanism that's highly digital, counts where the ads have run and how effectively they've run. And then all this information gets fed back in through, today, a highly manual process back out to the billing cycle. As we transition over to an ad platform, we expect that all of this will take place through some combination of ad platforms. Ours is certainly going to be one of them. And this creation of the ad platform allows for the development of a suite of tools and applications that sits on top of a set of composite services. And in the agency world, the composite services can look very much like an agency potentially developing an algorithm to track how keywords perform, or a keyword generation algorithm that lives on top of the algorithms that we from Microsoft have provided out of our core services. It might be partnering with another third party who has created a billing and reporting tool that they then plug in and expose as a service out to the agencies, the advertisers, and the publishers. And in order to make this work, there has to be a significant amount of trust underlying the participants of the platform members themselves. And this is one of the reasons that we push so hard to make sure that as we release our platform, as we release even the most basic components, that we may sometimes release them slowly, but we release them in a way that's highly credible. We don't deprecate APIs suddenly, for example. We keep them very well documented. We hold all the partners who are interested in partnering with us to a very high SLA, even as we're talking to them very early in stages, trying to figure out what this is going to look like a year from now. The expectation then is that while Microsoft will have a very rigorous process for defining which participants can take place as part of our ad platform and expose their services out to our partners themselves can decide that they want to have less rigorous standards and potentially open up the pool of partners that they can work with. There are going to be places where it is less important for some of our partners, for example, to hit certain SLAs than it's going to be for us to go ahead and provide that high SLA to begin with. So from a very high level, this is what our proposed target ad platform architecture looks like. We have the application and tools on top of the management framework, on top of the foundation services. And these foundation services are foundation services that we ourselves rely on and rest upon. We've done quite a bit of work internally to make sure that we are able to use our own cloud services in a scalable way, because we expect that our advertisers, our agencies, and our publishers will also be using those in a highly scalable way. The management framework itself is divided up into the core services, as I mentioned, and the composite services. And these are opened up in various layers and in various combinations to pilot participants, depending on the level of trust and the level of relationship we have with them. The application and tools layer is a very interesting one for us. For those of you who have been with us now for 2 years, you may remember that the very first application that we developed on top of our own platform was the ACE desktop tool, which is now, I think, in its third version. And building that out was instrumental for us. When we first decided to build an application on top of our own platform and make use of our own APIs, we learned very quickly that we wanted our APIs to be a bit better documented, a little bit more scalable. And in the end, we found that by eating our own dog food, every component of the ad platform that we've released has been very well documented, scalable, and trustworthy for our partners. So why Microsoft? So particularly in a world where a lot of people are saying Microsoft is not winning in advertising, or Microsoft is not yet winning in advertising, why do you want to place your long-term bets on us? Well, we've got a familiar developer environment. And this seems like such a small thing unless you understand the environment in which our partners are working. When you're talking about an IT team at a Fortune 500 company that's required to support a marketing team that may or may not understand the complexity involved in trying to get out the door what that marketing team is demanding. When you're talking about publishers who are trying to build tools and applications that can be understood easily by agencies and in turn be understood easily by the advertisers, to be sold to the advertisers, it helps for everybody to be sharing this consistent developer framework. The cloud stack that we're building, I think, is completely misunderstood in terms of its long-term value in the advertising ecosystem. The reason I believe this to be the case is that if you look across major corporations, advertising and marketing are the last great shared service to yet go digital. Supply chain management has gone completely digital. Customer relationship management has gone completely digital. And marketing, though it represents for most of these companies an expense, a line item that is somewhere in the top 3 and is almost always in the top 5, has yet to see this digitization of tools and services to drive efficiency in the processes. As companies are faced as advertisers with the challenge of transitioning into digital medium, this is happening at the same time as their ability to store ever larger amounts of data off premises and make use of it more cheaply than they were able to 5 or 10 years ago is happening at the same time. And so this investment in advertising and marketing tools is happening at the same time as their ability to invest fewer dollars for higher return on investment by leveraging other people's infrastructure rather than their own is taking place. This is a huge service opportunity. So as these companies go digital, they're increasingly looking for the opportunity to not have to build these tools internally, to not have to host these tools internally. And within the marketing industry, it's not so much a question of do they want to host it on their own infrastructure, do they want to host it elsewhere. It's not even an issue, because this is not a case of migrating tools that are already entrenched in someone's workflow and turning them into a service-based business. They just don't exist yet. And these companies want these things delivered quickly. They want them delivered in a way that's very, very low maintenance. And so the opportunity to deliver them within the current web services environment is significant. So what are the agency pain points, what are the advertiser pain points, the publisher pain points that can be solved by building on top of our platform. This is a bit of a summation, but for agencies, the move to digital medium makes delivering advertising more costly. As I said before, it's about 9 to 11 times as costly to manage a digital ad campaign as it is to manage a traditional ad campaign because of the amount of complexity involved in managing all the channels. Tools will allow agencies to deliver ads in a very cost-effective manner for advertisers, particularly as we shift into a recession. This is no small feat, and this carries a significant amount of importance for the advertisers themselves. Something else that's important, and that I didn't touch on earlier, is that advertisers can't today get compensated on the value they add. So what I mean by this is that within the advertising world, advertisers are paid largely by the hour. And so it has been, up to this point, more cost-effective for them to hire people to handle the flow of paperwork. As we shift to digital mediums, it is no longer cost-effective for them to do this. And they're looking for other ways to add value. And so when you can deliver a set of tools to an agency that helps show the impact they have on the bottom line and helps to also reduce the total cost to an advertiser of delivering that campaign, that's a win for both parties. And again, agencies consider this differentiation of tools at a local level to be a competitive differentiator. So this common development environment that we provide through this ad platform will lead to compatible tools being developed, which will allow for this differentiation at the local level, but continue to allow these tools to communicate with each other in a way that they're not able to do today. For advertisers, the biggest pain point advertisers feel is that as much as they want to, they can't shift dollars to medias where customers are spending their time. They just can't move those dollars from TV. They can't move them very easily from radio to online forums. And there's a need for tools that help agencies manage this transition effectively, that help agencies manage this number of channels effectively on behalf of the advertisers. There still isn't an easy way to allocate brand dollars, as I had mentioned before. It's one of the sexy problems to solve in advertising is how do you make it easy for an advertiser? Major advertisers are often spending less than 2% of their overall budget on digital advertising. How do you make it easy for them to justify shifting their ad dollars from their brand-based, TV-based spends onto an online spend? One of the best examples I've had of this over the last year is I was speaking at a conference with a number of marketing people, and I asked point blank, what you guys know that TV doesn't perform as well right now in terms of eyeball as online mediums. Why is it that you keep spending your budgets on TV? And one of them stood up finally and said, look, nobody I know has ever gotten fired for buying more TV advertising. So if you can make it easier for them to show the return on investment, to show the performance that their ad dollars have had on digital mediums, you'll by extension make it easier for them to reallocate their dollars away from these traditional analog mediums to the digital mediums. And publisher pain points are often the most intractable to solve, or at least appears to be the case right now. The biggest pain point the publishers have right now is the problem that I alluded to at the outset of the difficulty to surface their inventory to buyers. You can develop really great inventory, but unless you can get it in front of an agency holding company, and unless they can put it in front of enough advertisers to make it worth their while, you're just not going to be able to sell that very easily. You might though, and this is where I give my caveat, particularly for smaller companies and smaller teams. There are generally ways to get around this if you really need to. If you have a lot of patience, if you're willing to engage the sales team, if you're willing to engage that sales team and incent that sales team to go out and deal with the advertisers and deal with some of the smaller agencies who can handle this, it can be very effective. But I warn people up front that this is still a relatively difficult process. This is something that's going to get considerably easier over the next 6 to 12 months. But right now, it is still fairly difficult. Also, the lack of liquidity in the marketplace for publishers keeps the revenue volume relatively low. And when you end up running ads on this inventory that you have created, you'll find that the return isn't still as high as TV, for example, or as high as radio, even though sometimes it will perform better. And that's a liquidity issue. It's part and parcel of the entire problem of getting the ecosystem to mature so advertisers are able to put more money into the system. Last but not least, alternatives to keyword-based monetization limits experimentation and form. What I mean by this is that oftentimes I'll see somebody who's created something really cool, but the only scalable, the only really good scalable mechanism right now for getting that inventory in front of advertisers is on a keyword basis. So if there's no text associated with it, if it's an image, it can be very, very hard to continue to invest in this experimentation. There's a significant amount of room for growth in making use of this medium, and I encourage people to continue to invest in these new forms of content and in these new forms of the selling of the inventory on the site as the market matures, and you'll continue to be ahead of that. So how do you use the ad platform today? You can use it if you're an advertiser, you can use it if you're a publisher, you can use it if you're an agency. The example that I'm going to go through here is how do you use it if you're a publisher? So if you're a publisher, and in this case I'm going to assume you're a publisher of a website, there's a couple of things you can do when you walk out of the room today if you want to. You can get access to free site analytics, really great site analytics, at webmaster.live.com. One of the reasons I love this tool so much is that this is, like all the other tools we release through the ad platform, like many of the tools our live team is releasing, they're open. You can use the data you get here on any platform that you're working on any search partner, for example, that you're working on. So you can check to see on webmaster.live.com how your site is performing on our website. You can look for opportunities of optimization, and those also point to ways that you can optimize on other search engines as well. KSP is my all-time favorite tool right now that's come out of the ad platform. It's my all-time favorite service. I know a lot of people in this room are already using it. So KSP, for those of you who haven't seen it, allows for the algorithmic generation of a family of keywords based on an initial keyword. It then allows you to generate performance mechanisms to forecast how is this word going to perform. So from an advertiser perspective, for example, you can put in travel. You can generate a list of 50 keywords, which then you can expand if you want ad infinitum, 5,000 keywords. And you can see, all right, how much is this going to cost me? And how much is this going to perform over the next year? The flip side, of course, is that for a publisher tool, this is great. So if, for example, you've already decided I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write an article about cell phones, or I'm going to write a blog post about cell phones, and you're trying to figure out which cell phones you want to blog about, you can run your cell phone word selections through KSP, and it can predict for you how those keywords are going to perform. So it allows you to fine-tune your editorial selections to maximize revenue. I'm a huge believer in making sure you have great content before you try to monetize it, so I don't want to overstate how effective KSP can be in this situation, but it's incredibly effective for predicting how your content is going to perform on a keyword basis. You can also use Ad Center, and you can use the Ad Center Pub Center tool that's now in beta. It's in pilot. If anybody wants to use it, just go ahead and let me know. And you can go in a matter of 5-10 minutes. You'll have created your account. Generally takes about 24 hours to get approved to run as a publisher. But you can go ahead and you can run this through your standard reporting tools. You can combine it with your Ad Center advertiser tools, so that if you have, for example, a website and you want to increase traffic to the website, you can use this set of tools to make sure that the website is running well. You can use the KSP tool to optimize for keywords. You can set up to run ads on your website, and you can also incorporate this into your existing Ad Center account for advertising to make sure that your website is driving additional traffic through search-based advertising. Available today. So what's available today as you walk out of the room? You've got access to a full suite of APIs for the Ad Center paid search tool. If you want to have specific questions answered about that, you can see Walter and team in the back of the room. They're prepped and ready to go. So you can get access to the APIs for Ad Center. You can get access to some of the APIs for Pub Center. It's on a very limited basis, and we are piloting it, but we're being very selective about the number of participants that we pilot it with right now. You'll find that we have APIs available today for Media Console, which is most useful if you're an agency or if you're looking to build tools for agencies. And you'll find across the board our APIs are free, they're well documented, and they're platform agnostic. Again, any data that you take through our APIs, any data that you create through our APIs, any data you commingle through our APIs, you can use it wherever you want to. We'll make it relatively easy for you to transition. We also have a handful of live pilots going on right now in our very nascent ad platform. The Advertiser Aggregator pilot is one in which you build on top of our Ad Center APIs to allow you to aggregate as many accounts as you want on behalf of advertisers and manage their search campaigns and contextual campaigns on their behalf. One of the best applications I've seen built here, it was a really clever one, built by a team out of California, Reach Local. And what they've done is they took a look at the local market and they realized that your average local small business guy has gender neutral guy. Your average small business person has very little interest in managing their search campaigns. It's very hard to run a small business and also run advertising. But they found that what small business people do respond to is the number of telephone calls coming in. So they came up with this great tool that allows small businesses to buy from them a minimum number of phone calls coming in per month. And they then use the algorithms and the Ad Center APIs to develop an application on their side that lets them purchase keywords on behalf of those small businesses that then results in a specific number of phone calls out to the small business. It's just a great tool. It's incredibly well conceived, and it's an incredibly well-built tool. The advertiser dashboard, I've seen a couple of great advertiser dashboards built as well. The advertiser dashboards allow someone to manage through one consistent interface all of their search campaigns, and I've seen a couple now that allow you to manage your display campaigns as well. And one of the best ones I've seen, it's not yet available for public release, so I can't cite it, also allows for the incorporation of various networks, ad networks that are out there, and puts in front of a product manager the ability to look at all of their campaigns across all of the channels that have a digital feed and see how those are performing and to optimize against their campaign goals. The publisher aggregator scenario is one that we're just recently supporting through pilots, and what this allows for is a partner to create an application that opens up Pub Center and makes that available to a broader network of publishers as a monetization tool, as a keyword contextual-based monetization tool. And of course, we have Pub Center. So if you have a blog and you're interested in running our contextual ads on your blog, let me know and we can go ahead and get you signed up for this, and we'll send you through the approval process. One of the more complex pilots that we're opening up over this next month is with AdECN, which is our exchange product. And AdECN allows for a member to gather a seat on the exchange. It's a fairly exclusive pilot to sign up for, and then manage their inventory through this exchange with the bundling of inventory supplied by these publishers expected to create a significant amount of liquidity in this pool of inventory for advertisers to trade on. If you're interested in any of these pilots, you can contact us at Ad Platform Evangelism, ADPLATE at Microsoft.com. So what I want you to walk away with, and I hope this has been successful in getting this message across, is that advertising is an incredibly complex ecosystem, and there's room for a significant amount of participation that goes well beyond slapping a text ad or slapping a contextual ad on a blog. Microsoft is building an amazing ad platform. I show up every day and I'm just blown away by the complexity of the algorithms, the ease with which we're exposing them to partners to use, the level of reliability we're seeing across our platform, and its overall level of attractiveness to a broad pool of partners. Partners trust us with their data, and as it becomes more and more important for you to be able to make money on the exchange of data associated with the inventory itself, you're going to find it increasingly important and increasingly interesting a possibility to partner with us. And I hope you go away from this wanting to invest and build your advertising tools and applications on top of our platform. It's just an amazing piece of architecture that we're delivering, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody here using it. Please remember at the end to fill out your evaluation form, and the session will be available as a recording. I can't see the URL from here, but I'm sure all of you can. MicrosoftPDC.com. So, any questions? Adam, you don't even have a question? You always have a question.
It's interesting, you know, you made a comment about the shift to digital advertising is kind of hampered by this. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of excitement on the search side. What's popping on the display side, or what are the new forums that are going to help drive that?
Video. I think video is just an amazing opportunity over the next 2 to 5 years, because there's so much pent-up demand on behalf of advertisers to be able to put ads in a video format. And as video tools, like if you look at Silverlight, and if you look at its ease of use, I have an 8-year-old who's now creating videos in Silverlight. And she has a secret plan that she's going to monetize it better than her allowance currently pays her. We're like, have at it. There you go, kid. It's going to take her till she's probably 10 or 12, but she's got her plan. So if you look at the opportunity to put easy-to-make video tools in front of a wide variety of people's hands, the ability to target it at a very local level as it gets released over blogs, as it gets released over websites, into video pages, and as it's easier for agencies to be able to be very specific about the audience they reach into those videos, video is just going to completely take off. Yes?
You mentioned inventory prediction as a large area of opportunity. Where does that fit into your platform? And specifically, you mentioned you talk about Raft and how that's what your plans are for Raft.
So the reason that's the biggest challenge right now is that if you buy TV inventory, for example, as an advertiser, you know, hey, I bought this TV ad. It's going to run during the Super Bowl. It paid me a fortune, but I know it's going to be there. If you're trying to buy advertising space through an auction-based mechanism, you don't always have a guarantee that the ad is going to appear. You can bid high enough to almost virtually guarantee that it's going to appear, but you don't have a complete guarantee that it's going to appear. So as advertising within a digital medium shifts to an auction-based system, the ability to predict with a high level of accuracy exactly when and where your ad can appear and reach exactly the audience you intended, because audiences aren't as predictable online as they are on TV, is an incredibly difficult problem to solve. And that's where the real opportunity is for inventory prediction. I'd say RAT is an amazing first-generation tool for doing that, and there's still a tremendous amount of growth in the industry at large. That's going to be one of the most valuable tools to sell to advertisers and agencies and publishers. Yes?
Mobile was mentioned, I think, on one of your slides. What's your take on mobile plans, location-based advertising?
Just had this argument with somebody the other day, as a matter of fact. I think, for me, as an American, I tend to forget how important mobile advertising and being able to reach people on cell phones is across the world. And generally, when I'm talking about the ability to reach anybody on any device with the specific content they're looking for right then, mobile looms very large in my mind. If you look at the numbers associated with the mobile advertising market, particularly outside the US, they're huge. And I don't think that it's possible for someone to win unless they're able to have a significant presence in the mobile advertising market. The same problems, though, that apply for agencies and advertisers and every other form of advertising, bedevils mobile, with the additional difficulty, of course, of the local-based advertising. I've seen a couple of great solutions, though, to overcoming this. I saw this first Generation 1 solution that I saw just 2 weeks ago, and they're not ready to go public yet about it. They're a startup, but they have this really clever way of being able to take your location, feed it back to a keyword generation program, and they've just started using KSP. Based on the location, they're able to generate the appropriate keywords against which they could then match ads based on where you are. So if you're in, they're trying to get it to a point where if you're in a bar, they can deliver very specific ads based on your location. But I think that those sorts of solutions are very clever, and they're a way to shortcut some of the limitations right now that you see in the advertising ecosystem. I think next to video, mobile advertising over the next probably, I think over a shorter timeline, over 1 to 4 years, represents a really significant opportunity. Did that answer your question?
Sure.
Okay. Yes?
I had a question. I mean, with your example about the soccer mom and the cell phone, really collecting data about people viewing the ads, what does the platform have? I mean, how do you get that kind of data? A web browser seems fairly anonymous.
So one way you can do it today is through tracking the cookies. And so there's still a tendency for some people to look at just the last click and say, okay, this last click resulted in a conversion. And if you work your way back through the entire participation funnel, and you can track people's engagement through engagement mapping from the very first time they see an ad against a piece of content all the way through the point at which they actually click, you start to build a much more comprehensive map of the audience that has seen your ads, when they have seen them, across what device, and what their long-term behavior was associated with it. And so in the example of the soccer mom, you can very effectively sort out not only which was that last ad that caused that soccer mom to click instead of that 22-year-old frat guy, but you can also track back through the engagement pipeline what were all the ads and experiences they engaged in prior to reaching that click. And so you can invest your money deeper across the engagement funnel as well.
So I understand correctly, you're tracking, the platform can see the opportunity to track how many times that ad was displayed to that particular server.
Correct.
But how do you differentiate who that server is? I mean, that's not a server.
You can track it through ad serving and tags. And that can be tracked very accurately today.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Yes. Back row, last seat, by the door. Yeah.
So on a more technical level, which kind of formats do you foresee there? You notice it's not web stuff, it's sort of competitive pages, but we have Silverlight, we have WPF, we have web, we have feeds, we have Windows apps, like the map shows up Messenger at the bottom. I want to
Yep.
myself too. So I find myself restricted.
No, I think there's a breadth of formats, and Rob's session coming up, that's covered really well. So I can go into it in some detail, but Rob's going into it in much greater detail. Yes?
Is KSP working only against your live search platform or against
No. You can go into it, you can access it through, you can look for it on Ad Center, and you can look for it on live.com. Just look for KSP, Ad Center KSP. It's available through APIs. There's a great Excel add-in tool, which they can demo for you on the floor. And you can use the data you get there, and it's predictive across all search engines and formats. Yes?
Yeah, you mentioned that you're getting an open platform, but you talk about standardization of the data formats.
Yes.
Is that something that will be mentioned in the next session?
Yes, and I can talk to it as well. Within the industry, there's a tremendous push right now to standardize data formats. And I think all participants from a platform perspective are keenly interested in working toward that standardization. I've been meeting with people almost constantly for the last 2 months to drive towards some standards, and that's one of the places where you're going to see the biggest shifts in the next 6 months. Yes?
So, these tools that will allow developers of websites, so say we have a client who wants to have like rotating banner ads, that type of thing, and provide tools to be able to keep the banner ads to the site.
Yes, we'll open up the services, most certainly, on which other people can build the tools to do that. And there is an expectation that we're going to continue to develop tools and applications on top of our own services. The order in which we do that is up to roadmap guessing at this point. We do have a clear roadmap for some of our core applications and tools, and that's one of the ones that's slightly outside the core.
Do those ads that you want to serve on the websites today, are they people have to be partners or pre-registered with these tools, or is it something like you can feed what ads want to be served, or at least what your clients want served on their sites?
So there's a variety of ways you can do that. For simple text-based ads, you can just sign up through PubCenter with us. Very easy to do. If you're looking to run rich media ads, there's a suite of tools that we've got with the Aquantive acquisitions, ranging from Ad Manager to Drive PM, that give you varying level of control over the ads that are displayed, how they're displayed, and how they're sold. But those are available today. Any last questions? Excellent. Well, thank you all very much for your time. Hope that was useful. I look forward to seeing you use the ad platform.